Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. This is Holly Rice from the Modio marketing team, and today we are talking about our product called Soterre, which is a version control solution for Qlik Sense. I have Luke Wade with me today, and he will be demonstrating the actual product later on in our presentation. Before we dive in, I'd like to go over a few things about the webinar platform itself. You'll see right here we have a slide section. This is where you'll see everything from the demonstration to what I'm about to talk to you about. You can enlarge it, make it full screen, whatever you choose. Over here is your media player. This is where you will actually control what you hear. So there is no dial-in number. The webinar is being streamed through your browser. So audio is from your computer. We have a Q&A session at the end of the demonstration. So anytime you have a question throughout this webinar, go ahead, type in your question, send it in. We'll get to it hopefully. Hopefully we'll have enough time to get to everyone's questions. We also have a short survey. It's this little widget down here. And we'd love for you to fill that out towards the end of the webinar. Let us know how we're doing and anything you'd like to see at future webinars from us. So with that, let's just dive right into our first poll question.
All right, so how do you track changes in your Qlik Sense environment? So if you guys could select the one answer up here that best describes your situation, that would be great. And we don't track any changes currently. We save all changes locally. After we publish, we take a snapshot backup, or we make copies as we make changes. So we'll just hang out here for a few more seconds so everyone can answer those and then move on to the results. Okay, interesting, 50-50. Take a snapshot backup and make copies as we make changes. And we've seen a lot of that. That's certainly what we've seen as the most common scenarios as we've talked to Qlik Sense customers. Okay, so let's go on to poll number 2, and after that poll, we'll get right into the presentation. Okay, so what concerns do you have with your current version control method? And on this one, select all that apply to you and your current situation. When a mistake is made, there's no way to go back, so we try very hard to not make mistakes. Saving different versions creates a lot of clutter and slows down Qlik Sense. Or it's too difficult to know which version is truly the latest and takes too long to manually revert to a previous version. Managing our current method is an administrative nightmare. Or we're all unicorns and we are happy as can be. All right, so let's move on now to the results. Okay, 100%. Mistakes made, there's no way to go back. Very hard. So we try very hard to not make mistakes. And, you know, being humans, we make mistakes all the time. So this is really not the best solution. And then 66% on saving versions. Creates a lot of clutter, certainly does. And then coming in about evenly with that one is, you know, the problem with trying to figure out what version was truly the latest and it taking too long to manually go back. And I'm glad to see that there are no unicorns out there. It is a myth. All right, so let's move right into the presentation.
Okay, so let's talk about what if when you made a mistake in life, you could go back in time and immediately undo it. Maybe you could go back and not accidentally throw away your wedding band in the garbage. Or Maybe you've oversalted dinner for your family, and now you have to spend time adding liquids or other ingredients to neutralize the flavor so that your family can actually eat. Well, in life, unfortunately, there is no version control. I can't tell you how many times I wish there was an undo button on something I've done. You can't go back, but you just have to keep moving forward and bouncing back from mistakes and circumstances. So next time you might taste your dinner as you go about cooking it so you get that flavor just right. And in the case of, you're missing wedding band, unfortunately you would just have to cough up that money again, but be extra careful not to make the same mistake in the future. Now, you might be wondering, why am I talking about food? Why am I talking about wedding bands? I'm trying to create an analogy to some of the things that happen in Qlik Sense and not having a version control system in place. So with the wedding band example, in comparison to when you delete an object in Qlik Sense, unfortunately, you simply can't go back. And our dinner we screwed up. I suggested you taste as you go to get it right. And if you were to be able to experiment freely in Qlik Sense and you introduce changes, but then they negatively affect your end users, it's not so simple to just go back to the previous version of something and undo what was done. You'll have to be very meticulous with your process of introducing changes and how you and your team are tracking them. Here's what one of our customers was doing to get around these scenarios in Qlik Sense. And you may have implemented this type of system yourself. It's a do-it-yourself version control system where you make copies of everything. Make copies as you make changes. First off, this can get really confusing. How do you determine which copy is actually the most recent? What if a mistake was made in version 3, but you can't remember if version 2 Mary came before version 2 Mark? Do you have time to sort through all of your saved copies, read through lines of code until you find the difference, and then try to fix that last working copy? That same customer I mentioned that was doing this type of homegrown do-it-yourself version control, they would spend hours to days just to find that last correct version and then copy it over into the live Qlik environment. So a lot of time was wasted on that process. Secondly, think about all the space these copies take up on your desktop and your Qlik Sense environment. This creates lots of clutter and can cause lags in Qlik Sense. But I know it's normal to be afraid to delete content that you may end up needing. You have 15 objects when all you need are 3. This is where Soterre comes to the rescue. Soterre is a version control solution, and it tracks your changes of all your apps, your streams, your data connections, tags, custom properties, and so on. And this means that you have access to all of your previous versions, so you can compare and even restore to a prior version. Soterre's version control also creates an audit trail. This helps with governance, and it ensures that there is always an accurate and reliable trail of those changes. And Soterre lets you get to results faster. You spend less time searching and pinpointing the desired content to change, and you can put that time back toward analyzing. So with this solution, you don't have to worry anymore about creating copies as you're making changes or sorting through previous versions when you make a mistake or something's introduced and causes issues. simply have that safety net where you can go back easily. And we had a customer that their way of creating a sense of version control was they wrote a bunch of code, but it was only versioning their load script, so they were still limited. And that customer and the one that I referenced that was doing that do-it-yourself, making copies as they made changes, they both said that one of the greatest benefits of having Soterre was that now they had the freedom, they could take more risks, and they could truly, innovate with Qlik Sense and not worry. That fear was gone. And they said that was priceless for them to be able to do that. So with that, let's hand off to Luke so we can get into the solution itself.
Thanks, Holly. So today we're going to be talking about one of Soterre's biggest features, which is version control for Qlik Sense. And I'm going to start off on my Qlik Sense development server so that we have an idea of what we're working with. We have a few streams here, 3 non-monitoring streams, and I'll click through those. Each stream has a few apps. That one had 3, this one has 2, and this one has 2. And so we're primarily going to be working with this fleet surplus auction app. So I will open that up. And as you'll see when this loads, this has the objects that you would expect. So these are the objects that you would expect. There are 3 sheets. We have, maybe 5 bookmarks here, and we have 1 story. And so let's just open up and click through these sheets just so that you can see that everything is working correctly. And here you see that we have some simple charts. Our visualizations are loading the data properly. And so everything in this app looks pretty typical and pretty good. Everything's working correctly. So now let's switch over to Soterre and see how Soterre presents our data. And so this is the main view in Soterre, and we have a search feature and an explore feature at the top left. Most people are pretty familiar with the search feature, but let's click on this explore feature, and you'll see that we have 2 Qlik servers that we have linked up with this installation of Soterre. And Soterre has these 2 servers under version control. And so the Qlik Sense environment that I just showed you was my development environment. So that's what we'll be working in today for this demo. And so if I click on development here, you'll see that a panel slides out with a bunch of different folders for different QMC objects. And the bottom 2 in blue are Soterre objects, and we won't get into those today, but those are another pretty cool feature that we give you in Soterre. So if we click on custom properties here, you'll see that Soterre has versioned all of the custom properties in our environment, similarly for tags here. And if I click on streams, you'll see the 3 non-monitoring streams and then the monitoring stream that we saw earlier. And if we click on this data analysis stream, you'll see that fleet surplus auction app that we opened up and clicked through earlier. So this is where things start to get a little more interesting. If I click on the app, you'll see that Soterre splits out the app's objects into separate groupings, and this essentially makes them first-class citizens. This gives you flexibility for your version control. And if we click on sheets, we'll see the 3 sheets that we saw earlier when we looked at them in Qlik Sense. And so we version all of the different objects that make up the app, and you see those objects here. So let's go back and let's double-click on this app to open it up. And so this is the main view that shows us the properties of the latest version of the app. And as you'll see, we have links to sheets, stories, bookmarks. You can view the load model, and you can also view the load script. So if I click on view here, you'll see the load script for this app. Now we're on the Properties tab. If I move over to the Change History tab up here, here we have all of the different versions of this Fleet Surplus Auction app. And for each of these versions, you can view the app as it existed at that state and time for each version. So if I go to version 3 here and click view this View App Version 3 button, that's what the app looked like in version 3. And you know, the biggest difference that you'll notice here is that we have a different thumbnail. The current thumbnail is more of a picture, and this is just kind of text explaining what this app is all about. So I'm going to close out of this. And so now what I'd like to do is I'd like to go to Qlik and make some changes to this app so that we can see how Soterre is versioning these changes and how this version control works. So I'm going to go back to my Qlik Sense hub here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this Fleet Surplus Auction app, and that'll take just a second. And once that's in my personal work folder, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make kind of the three classic changes here. I'm going to do a create, an edit, and a delete. So I'm going to open this app up. We're going to delete a sheet here, and so I'll just open up this last regional fleet sheet. Okay, and so this is the sheet that we're going to delete. And let me go back to the app overview. So we're going to delete this sheet off. And then I'm also going to open a sheet, and I'm going to make some selections to create a new bookmark here. And so I'll just make a selection in this chart, create a new bookmark, and we'll call it Demo Bookmark. Okay, and now you'll see that we have a 6th bookmark here that was added just now, this Demo Bookmark. And then I'm also going to open up the load script and do an edit here. So we're going to go to the data load editor. And what you'll see here, just for the purposes of a quick demo, all of the variables in this data script have been duplicated. So this isn't going to have, this isn't going to make any differences to the way this data is being loaded. But we're just going to go ahead and we are going to delete off these duplicated variables. So those are gone. There's not going to be any functional difference for the app here, but I'm going to go ahead and save and then reload this data with those duplicates deleted off. And this should take just a second. Okay, so that finished successfully. Everything looks good. So I've done a create, an edit, and a delete. And now I'd like to switch back to Soterre and version this app. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish the version that I just worked on and replace the existing app. And so this has now been published with my changes, and I'm going to go back to Soterre. Open the app up again, and I'm going to click this Find Changes button at the top here. And so we've just manually kicked off a versioning job, and we hope that Soterre is going to pick up the 3 changes that we just made to the app. And by default, when we install Soterre, this versioning job happens every 2 hours, but that's customizable and totally up to you. I currently have it turned off for my demo environment, but that versioning job just finished, and you'll see that it just found the 3 changes I made. It found that 1 thing was added, 1 thing was changed, and 1 thing was deleted. So it's picked up these changes, and these are links that I can click on. So I'm going to click on this one added link, and as you can see, we have 3 tabs at the top here for the different things that were changed, right? We have 1 addition, 1 change, and 1 deletion. And so what did we add here? We added a bookmark, this demo bookmark. What did we change? Something about the app, and we changed the load script, which we'll look at in detail in just a minute. And then what did we delete? We deleted this regional fleet sheet. So now, if I go back to this this app home screen here and go over to the change history, you'll see that we have this version 7 of the app now. And if I compare this version to the previous version, which I can do, I can compare it to any previous version, but I have a button here that will compare it to the most recent version. And so I'm going to click on that, and if we go to the script, what you'll see is everything shaded gray here at the bottom has been removed, and so that's a difference between this current version and the previous version because I removed all of those duplicated variables. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is, let's imagine that we want the changes that I made to persist, but I deleted that sheet by mistake. So I want to recover the sheet that I deleted, but I want to keep the bookmark that I created, and I want to keep the changes that I made to the load script. So we're not totally restoring this app back to version 6. We just want to get that deleted sheet back. And so that's really easy to do with Soterre. So I'm going to close out and kind of start from the beginning again. Click on this explore thing. We have the app right here. And if I go to sheets, you'll see that this regional fleet sheet has been deleted, and there's a symbol next to it, so we know that it's been deleted. And I'm going to open this up, go to my change history, and you'll see here that we have the date and time that this sheet was deleted, and version 6 is the deleted version. So if I want to get this sheet back, I'm going to click on version 5, which is the most recent version of this sheet before I deleted it, and I'm going to go ahead and click on restore here. And so I'm going to use my current logged in credentials. I'm already logged in. I can just click finish here. And so this is going to restore my sheet. And while we restore this sheet, I do want to point out another pretty new and useful feature that we recently added in Soterre, and that's the ability to comment on these different versions. And so version 6 was deleted, and I'll comment that this was deleted by accident. Click OK here. And then version 5, I'm going to comment and say this is a stable version, and this is the version that we just restored. And so now if I click this plus next to these versions, we see our comment here. This one was deleted by accident, and version 5 is our stable version. And if I look at the deployment history here, and let me refresh this. So this is almost finished going, and so we have those comments. The sheet is being restored, and in just a second, let's see. So the restore job has completed, and if we look at change history now that this is completed, you'll see that there's a version 7 of this sheet, and what have we done with version 7? We've restored version 5. And so now if I go back to my Qlik Sense hub, to my Fleet Surplus Auction app, and we open the app up, you'll see that we got this regional sheet back, and everything, the data is loading correctly, the visualizations are rendering correctly, but we still have the new bookmark that we created a few minutes ago. And if we were to open up the load script, you would see that those changes have persisted as well. And so that's what I wanted to show you guys today. There's a lot more that Soterre can do, but that's just kind of a high-level overview of version control for Qlik Sense using Soterre. Thanks a lot.
All right, great presentation, Luke. So now we're going to get into some Q&A questions. Before I do so, just want to remind you guys again about that survey widget at the bottom of your webinar console. If you can take a few moments to fill that out, we would greatly appreciate it. We want to create webinars that you're interested in and content you want to see. So I also want to mention we have two of our very talented software engineers from the Soterre team that will be helping me answer questions today. We have Patrick Thompson and Matt Tebow. So I'll take this first question and we'll ping pong back and forth to answer the rest of them as we have time to. So first question, does this work on QlikView? No, it only works on Qlik Sense. Another good question we have here is, my team is only one developer. How will this help me? Well, we actually have a customer of Soterre who is a one-man shop. And in reviewing our product versus others on the market, they loved how ours integrated with Qlik Sense. They loved the ease of use. And so they went with Soterre and are very happy with it.
Okay, we have another question here. It's basically asking, how does Soterre work? Does it exist on top of my Qlik environment? And the answer is yes. It's on top of Qlik in the sense that it's going to be versioning and kind of monitoring your content. But the important thing to remember is that Soterre is not going to get in front of your environment. And what I mean by that is that your developers are not going to have to change their workflow and their methodology when it comes to making changes, developing their content in Qlik. They're still going to be able to go through the hub and make those sorts of changes. And what Soterre provides is whenever you have something that breaks or whenever you want to just get an overview of the changes that are being made, that's when you go to Soterre. You don't have to go to Soterre and it's not going to change your workflow. Another question here is kind of an expansion on the restore that Luke was showing earlier. And the question is that, can you restore an entire app, much like if you imported an old QVF? And the answer is yes, it's quite easy to do so. Just like how Luke showed restoring a single sheet. It's basically the same workflow. You go into Soterre, you're going to say, I want to restore this app and everything under it. And the only difference is that you're going to add a filter and you're going to tell Soterre, restore it as it was on this date, whether it be 5 days ago, a month ago. And that'll get you that same functionality that you already have through importing and exporting QVFs. We have another question that's talking about how does cross-environment deployment or restore work? And that's an excellent question. We didn't cover it in the webinar, but you are able to deploy everything that Soterre has versioned from one environment to another. So you can deploy the sheets that we saw, the sheets and the app content that we saw in the webinar. But you can also deploy those QMC objects. So you're getting entirely new functionality that you don't even have in Qlik. So the answer is a resounding yes.
Okay, everyone, we are right at the top of the hour, and it looks like we still have questions coming in. So what we're going to do is get back with you individually on those questions and have conversations with you about those. We're going to leave the chat or the Q&A pane up for just a couple more minutes. So if you've got those questions and want us to contact you back, go ahead and fill in that question in the Q&A. Thanks so much for attending our webinar today, and we hope to talk to you very soon.